Are we good still?
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Into Cybersecurity, where we share the journeys of individuals that have come into cybersecurity through different means. And today we have a very special guest. I'm going to mess it up again. Ebrima.
Yeah, the echo is really bad
Okay,
from my end.
well,
It's back.
we're
Okay,
live right now, so
you're good now.
okay, perfect. So for everyone following us on LinkedIn, follow myself and Imbra. And for those of you on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and that notification button. And for those of you following us after the fact on podcast, thank you for following us and share us with all your friends and family. So today's journey is a little bit different because our guest has been in cybersecurity for more than 5 years, but the reason I wanted to share his journey is the journey that he took. He's had a very windy path to how he got here. And I think that really highlights different ways that individuals can come into the community. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for inviting me today, and it's a pleasure to be in company with all of you. To a little bit about self, again, my name is spelled Ebrima. I know it has a feminine spelling to it, but it's a derivative of Abraham, and I'll tell you other stories about it because I get advertisement for women items when they're selling them because I get bombarded in the house instead of my wife. But anyway, my name is Ebrima. Last name is Ceesay. And I'm again honored to be here with all of you today. Formerly in the real world or non-real world, depending on how one says it, Chris and I are colleagues at a company that we both work at. I don't know if you have to say that, but if one were doing one's research, you'll easily find that out online. So, yeah, and I'm happy to be here today to have an entertaining discourse with you.
Absolutely. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with the audience, what first got you interested in tech?
I have always been interested in tech. A little background: I was born in a small country in the sub-Saharan Africa called the Gambia. Unlike America, maybe unlike other places, you are actually predestined to what it is that you're going to study. You don't have much say into it because when I was in primary school, after you pass the whole West African examination council exam, you go to a high school. And then that time there were only 5 high schools in the Gambia. So for the first couple of years in the high school, you take tons of classes. And then depending on how you perform, the school will decide whether you are going to go study science or you're going to go to study commerce or you're going to go study arts. So I was then put into science. So that's how I ended up getting started in science. It was not by choice. For me, I did not have much say in it because the school told, okay, you are good enough to go into sciences. That decision was made on my behalf. So then when I came to America, after high school, I came to America. I used to work a little bit in the Gambia in the Accountant General's department. And as a village kid, I've never seen a computer. But when I started working for the government, this was the first time I saw what was, quote unquote, a computer. And this was early 90s. I fell in love with them. I found ways through which to help just to volunteer to be able to touch these computers. And I was carrying paperwork and other things over there. But push it forward, come forward. Based on where I was from, in the Gambia, and many in the audience could relate to, if you are from the sub-Saharan Africa or you are from the India or the Asian community, you are told you have to be a doctor, you have to be an engineer or something else. So in my family, a lot of people study medicine. I thought I was going to study medicine, but what ended up happening, after 2 years in community college, I went to community college in Delta College in Stockton, California. I took some classes, and then from my instructors, one in particular, may his soul rest in peace, in all my computer science classes, I was fortunate enough to get good grades. He suggested to me that, Ceesay, you should not be going into studying medicine. I know that's what you want to do, but you need to try this thing called computer. I said, I fell in love with them before. Maybe I need to truly focus on computers. And this is literally how I ended up finding my way in computers, in particular computing science. I was working on campus in the computers, in the computing office, to make ends meet. So again, one thing led to another, building on from the other things I've experienced with. And literally, this is how I found my way into tech, because naturally the choice was made for me into sciences. And with sciences, when I thought I was going to study medicine or pre-med. I ended up studying computers, and one thing led to another. And that's how I found my way into the field.
Wow, that's very similar to the system I grew up in. Most folks don't know that I grew up in the Caribbean. And part of the thing there is, as you go into high school, you had to either select that you're doing sciences, that you're doing math, that you're doing literacy. Like, you only had like 4 categories that you had to choose, and you had to do the A levels after that, which was from the British system. But yeah, love that you picked up computers from your med science interest. So where did you go from there?
I know it was echoing. I could not hear clearly. If I could repeat, were you saying then from the med science, what ended up happening later on?
Yeah, let's work on this echo. Maybe you could try a different output on your side.
Can you say something, Chris, now?
Yes, I'm here now.
All right.
Still an echo?
That's a little bit better, but the echo is still there. Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay. So you mentioned that you had an interest in in the medical field, and then you started to find out more about computers. Your first role in computers looked like it was an analyst role. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was on campus. It was a computer support technician. Literally on campus at college, I was working for the computing department. I now got introduced to the basics of computing while I was taking computer science classes, and networking in particular. I was working on campus, doing wiring, terminating cables, and literally the help desk support on campus helped me truly got my feet wet. And another thing that also happened when I transferred from a community college, I went to California State University at Chico. Chico had a fantastic program with IBM. So I ended up interning at IBM. In late 99, I started doing co-op internship with IBM. And of course, from there on, I also, while I was doing masters and whatnot, I became a software developer / co-op / intern at Apple, where I spent 3 years also. So one thing led to another, and I ended up, this is how I found my way into the IT field.
So from that developer field, were you interested in security at that point, or was it more in the developing side?
So I always love development, but the security story, I'll give you that. Growing up in West Africa, my mother tongue is Mandinka. What first interested me about security was I will be amongst the elders. I speak this language, it's my mother tongue, but yet still they will switch context in a way that they will start speaking in a coded way, and I would not understand. This was my first exposure to security. So after undergraduate, I I started having interest in security because things started coming back from my childhood days. And when I applied to university for PhD program at University of California, where I studied under some of the seminal folks in intrusion detection, Carl Levitt, Matt Bishop, cryptography, Phil Rogaway, and Matt Franklin, and others. So I studied under those people. But as I said, when I was finishing my master's, which I did, my undergraduate was computer science, math, uh, as a minor. My master's was still computer science, AI, expert system, and whatnot. But security, of course, it has always been there for me. When I applied to the PhD program, there was no cybersecurity by that time. It's security, but my interest to it was how do we actually apply? Because the IDS system were there, and I've seen my advisors and others did some seminal work there. But what interested me was, as a human, we adapt. And what I was observing in the systems that we built before, there was no adaptability. We write a bunch of rules. A rule-based system, if the rule, and it's practically impossible for one to write all the rules. It's because what you don't know, you can't know. So my interest, what brought was, as human, we adapt. I was brought up in the Gambia. I was speaking Mandinka. My English was not that great, and it's still not that great. But I constantly keep adapting, because if I don't adapt, I will not be able to survive in some context. So I thought what we need to do, or my push still is, we have to have security has to be adaptable. And AI, my AI background, I brought that into security and to build systems that are adaptive. This is what brought me right into security. And then, of course, this was all graduate student school time, working at IBM research, and as well as working at Apple back and forth. But after grad school, I found myself in the workforce. When the journey there, I can elaborate on that.
Well, let's go on to that. I love the idea of an adaptive system when it comes to security. And I think even business users, you need to be able to work with them and adapt with the changing business environment.
Yeah. So what happened after I graduated in 2008, when I finished my PhD, I did not want to go back to Apple because I just wanted to continue doing research. And at Apple, there was no true quote research, because one thing I will say, there's this recombinant innovation. When you look at Apple product, you'll find out that a hard drive has been invented before. Certain things have been invented, but Apple can grab those two together and then put a right interface on top of it and then create a market around it, and you call it iPod. And here is a beautiful way to listen to music. So I was truly interested in a true research, a pure research. And 2008, the market was tanking. As the Silicon Valley, a lot of companies were going under or went under. Booz Allen came. That's a long story, but I was recruiting because I was a graduate student ambassador for University of California, where I would recruit women and minorities to come into the sciences. I bumped into Booz Allen. They were recruited at an event in Orlando, and it was a NESB event. So I never thought I would come to the East Coast. That's what ended up happening. So I came to the East Coast. I found myself in the national security space. So moving forward, or just before that, because after 9/11, we all know the security lapses. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence was formed with the sole purpose and intent to converge where our intelligence agencies work. And in 2008, President Bush created what was called the Comprehensive National Cybersecurity Initiative, the CNCI. And this was the first ever time where, as a nation, we came together to say, this thing we call cybersecurity or cyberspace, one needs to have a collective take at it if we're really going to do better at it. So that was the intent of CNCI. And while I was in this space, in the national security space, I was recruited to actually go as working for a defense contractor to work within that space. I had portfolios called the NICE portfolio, which was the National Initiative on Cybersecurity Education, outcome of which were the National Cybersecurity Workforce Framework and others. We developed all of that. The National Security, so Initiative 5 was the convergence of our national cybersecurity centers. This is the NTOC, NCIJTF, and yeah, ICRRC, DC3, and the rest. Because that time, intelligence need to be said. We need a situational awareness through which what it is that you have, Chris, I can know, and for the purpose for which ODNI was created, those lapses would no longer exist. So the NICE was one of my portfolios, and there was Initiative 9, which was leap ahead research. How do we continue to remain atop of everything? Because we are catalysts to what is we created, this technology. So how do we remain atop? And then the research and the classified side and other things was some of the things I was responsible for. And how do we redirect and coordinate our limited resources to actually do what we need to do within the cyberspace? So when people ask me, so how do you make a break? I said, well, cybersecurity found me when I was in security already. Because when I talked to my advisors, he said, oh, computer science was in math and statistics department during those days. But cybersecurity found me because cybersecurity as a term was first coined, I believe, in 1989. You don't have the cyberspace. You have different definition, and folks who live in, you'll hear people contending over or trying to create even a discipline of what is information security versus cybersecurity. But these are two different things, because if you look at that of NIST, you're looking at cyber for the defense of everything in the cyberspace. Information security is about information, the system to try to prevent, to protect, and defend against disruptions and whatnot. So you could see for me, it was naturally made, luckily, that I did not have to go around to do X, to do Y, to do Z or Z, depending on what one calls it. But I was literally fortunate, because I was literally fortunate, and to be brought up by a community and to be supported by a community to actually make it this far. Because at that time, the ODNI was looking for somebody who has a PhD, knows the sciences, and then is in security. We need some person of that capacity to actually run some of these portfolios. And when you look at some of those portfolios, when you collapse them, you're looking at nothing less than a little over $1 billion plus, or closer to $1 billion investment. So this is how my journey. That was my journey to find myself there. But unfortunately, after 12 years within this space, a year and a half ago, I decided, in order to get back into the global discourse, I need to separate myself from the cleared wall, which some of you out there might be able to relate to. But this has been my journey, and right now I'm in the financial sector. And of course, one thing I did mention to Chris, I'm still, as I call myself, a pseudo academic affiliated with Johns Hopkins University, where I teach at George Mason University and the University of California, Berkeley, the School of Information. So I'm still in security, and then my current research interest is at the intersect of cybersecurity, data science, the security of the algorithms themselves that we are using or we're leveraging for the good of what they provide.
Well, you said a lot, and initially, because of the audio issues, I didn't want to interrupt you, but some of the points that I wanted to touch on, that you created you were instrumental in the framework for NICE, NIST, and workforce development, and that's something that myself and the whole Cyberhuman initiative that we love to utilize, because it allows individuals that have no background in cybersecurity to look at this, to look at the skills, knowledge, and abilities that a specific role might have, so that they could gauge the interest for the role. So I didn't know that about you. Absolutely amazing. Like, I'm sitting here like, whoa, quite an honor to be here. As you developed that, was there any thought that the private sector would potentially adopt that, and how we can use that as a strategic initiative to improve recruiting and talent pipelining in the private sector as well?
Yeah, because while developing that framework, we ensured that, of course, the executing agency was the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, but we have DHS, which was an executive agency, and NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And we had to bring everyone at the table, because if you recall, the purpose and for which CNCI was created is we got to go at this as a nation together. And what was happening without the framework or before the framework, you find us talking past each other. You will say one thing, I say one thing, they could mean the same thing to each of us, but the vernacular or the vocabulary was not something we agreed on. So, and we said as a nation, if we are to be there, not only industry, from academic institution, as you've seen now, the curriculum are tailored to that framework, those 7 categories of the domain of cybersecurity, to make sure that not only from in a workspace, but from K to PhD and in a professional work environment, we have this language. We don't walk past each other, but understand what it is. Because if you don't have a framework, you only create a confusion. So not only the government, the private sector, industry, and academia had to come together while we were creating that. It's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. But we believe one has to start from somewhere. And then let's agree to disagree on something good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. And it goes. There are several iterations that happen before we get to the workforce framework version 2 and whatnot. But this is how it came to be about. Because if we are to solve something, the vernacular has to be understandable. Because it's almost like standardization. If I were to speak my mother tongue today and you speak in English and I don't understand English, we'll be talking past by each other. But we've agreed that here is the standard, or here is the norm we had to operate by. And that made it really easy for all of us. Like I said, it's not perfect, but it was good enough for us to build upon it, whereby the right job codes can be created, the right training can be created, and then both from academe and non-academe to the professional trainers, everyone, when we say one thing, we know that's what it means, and what kind of core competencies and skill sets are needed for one to be able to demonstrate in such a field. And that I believe has taken us much more further than where we were to address the challenges we are having, or we had, when it comes to cybersecurity.
Well, I think we still have those challenges. I mean, 10 years later, there's still OWASP top 10 issues that are happening as developers master one or all 10 of them and then retire out. Folks coming back in make the same mistakes over and over again. So it continues to be there. But I think it's a great framework that we can look to potentially bring back or continue to drive in through K through 12 for awareness as to the potential opportunities within cybersecurity, and work with the states and local agencies. That way they can create workforce development frameworks, if they don't have them already, based on this, so that they can better serve their population. And I know some states like Texas are doing a really great job in providing these resources, while other states might not be doing as good.
Yeah, and then to one point that you highlighted, security, I think there's a cultural dynamic issues we have to get to the bottom of. Because right now, sometimes with my students, I'll laugh. I said, you guys are not true developer, you are stitchers. Because before, we have to write our own libraries for things to run. Now, you can just go to Stack Overflow and other places, grab code here, stitch it together, it works. But I think at the core of it, the reason I said it has a cultural dynamic is we truly have to teach people how to securely write code, how to be a defender when you write code. Because as you said, I turn around, I see the same buffer overflow issues that I was taught when I was in grad school in the late 90s. So if we are not teaching people to write code in a defensive manner, because right now we are going to continue having those issues. Because right now you find people, you pick a book or two, you go to YouTube, you watch a video or two, and you can write code. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you are a good coder. It's just like driving. There are tons of people with driver's license, but that doesn't make one a good driver. unless and until in some places the experience and going to a defensive driving school, you really know how to handle the rules of the road, because the majority can start the car, and because it's either going to go forward or backward, they will do that. But the reality of the matter is, are you driving in the right manner, following the right protocol, to make sure that not only yourself, but you are not endangering the life of others on the road? And that's the same thing we have to do when it comes to security and writing codes rightly.
Wow, I love that analogy. So, as you continue to grow in your career, what are some of the future problems that you look to help tackle in society? I mean, we have AI, we have huge amounts of data being created every day. We have threat actors constantly evolving. What are some of the things that we can do to help prepare ourselves to defend?
I think the beauty of security, like I'll tell my student, is it's a mountain. You have to realize it's a mountain whose summit you will never reach. There is no absoluteness in security, because if you look at some of the things that we uncovered, we do the best we can, we think humanly possible, but because we are human, that makes us incomplete. So that has to give you one, if you are in security, you need to be humble, because if you are not humble, any day a kid can come by, eat your lunch. You do the best you can. And I think the humility part, that's a big push. We have to be humble. And as you've highlighted with AI, ML, data science, with the massive amount of data that's been produced. So in any field this day, data is a problem. The challenges of massive amount of data is a problem. In cyber, you have to find that that adversary or the needle in the haystack in the massive amount more data. So the convergence, or at the intersect of the, try to be as much fungible as possible. Be a constant learner. I believe I call myself a career student, because I only know so much. I remember this when I graduated with my PhD. My advisor hooted me. The next thing he told me, just realize you don't know anything. I said, what do you mean? After all this torture, you just told me I don't know anything. He said, yeah, I want you to go with that to the wall. And this keeps me grounded. And of course, there are promises of AI, there are promises of ML and other things. But fundamentally, with all these technologies, I think the responsible science comes into play. We always have to be responsible stewards of what it is that we do, because what AI, the machine learning, and others we are seeing, and big data, they are exacerbating a tiny little problem can massively be exacerbated because of machines are acting at it. And this is something we all have to think about, because sometimes we are working on problems that are the consequences are life and death. And these are things we need to be aware of, because, for example, when I talk to my colleagues who are developing some models, which those models could be used to determine, hey, where Chris, you can whether you'll be given that credit so that you can live in the right neighborhood, your kids or your loved one can go to the right school. If you are denied, and when they not do a due diligence whereby biases are not inherent there, that will deny you and your loved ones to live in the right place. And these things are happening. We see it day in and day out. We hear about them. So the responsible science is to all the work we do, be it cyber, be it anything else. I think that has to be at the core. And in the humility part, and for all of you who are trying to break a career path in cybersecurity, there is no single straight path. We all came from a different way. And just know that no matter how, don't feel like, oh, Chris knows all of this. Chris has to start from somewhere. Don't compare yourself to Chris. Chris is of yesterday and Chris of today is different. And if you look at yourself of yesterday, you look at yourself of today, you are a completely different creature. So you came a long way. Try not to compete with everybody, because my mantra is, if you compete with yourself, everybody will help you. But if you compete with everyone, no one helps you. So seek counsel, seek guidance, be a humble learner, have advisors. Don't ever feel like you know it all, because look at it. Let's say basketball. Michael Jordan, he's the best of all time, but he had a coach, right? That means for the constant improvement side. So, but for the sciences, for the other domain, we think that, oh, I have a PhD. Oh, I'm the boss in this way. Oh, I'm the VP. And you don't want to seek coaching, because when you seek coaching, it only makes you to be better. So there's this two learning model where you see in academia, oh, you got to the terminal degree, so you are the end all and be all. But you see in sports, these guys are the best in whatever they do, yet still they got people to coach them to be even better. So again, find those coaches. Don't compare yourself with Michael and Chris and I, but be humble enough that there is always room for you to grow, and there are resources out there. And all of us are here to help you make a career in this space. No one knows it all, and we do know that. And I for sure know that you have something you can bring to the table. As my favorite coach, I'm an Arsenal fan. Arsene Wenger would say, the team is most efficient when everyone is bringing their best to the table. So, for example, right now, you have Olympian players. Look at Paris Saint-Germain. They have Messi, they have Neymar, they have Mbappe, they have Morata, and you call the names, but they can't even pass the quarterfinal of Champions League with all the money they spend. So you could see, yeah. So with all the money they are spending, so again, to this is just stay humble. Know that it's a team sport, and this is why, in the first place, CNCI was created, so that as a nation we can protect what it is, our way of living, and then contribute to the survival of humankind.
Well, you already answered the question I was going to ask, is what kind of advice you would give someone. So thank you for that. Thank you for joining us. We usually run a half hour, and we went over that. Sorry for taking your time, but really appreciate you coming on and joining us. Loved your story, loved your advice. You're welcome back anytime. For those of you following us on LinkedIn, follow myself and Abram. For those of you on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and that notification button. And then after the fact, for everyone on podcast, please share it with everyone that you can. We need lots of folks to come join us with different backgrounds, different experiences, different points of view, so that we can help solve the complex problems of tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.